Welcome back to Necrobarista. It looks like we're in Ashley's room. There's a couple of things we can read in here. There's 4 of them, as it looks like. This one's probably for free again. Yes, so we're gonna read that later. I don't think we've read Ashley's Inventions 1, did we? We can't unlock it anyway, since we're missing lore. That's not lore, is it? That's lore. Where's that? Well, we'll find some of it eventually. Something down under. No, I'm missing coffee? Or the cafe? Something like that. And for Fate of Icarus. I've got everything. So let's read that. The first thing Shay noticed when he entered Ashley's workshop was that her workbench was not in its usual place. It had been pushed up against the wall. The second thing he noticed was that Ashley was sitting on a bench, her back slumped against the wall, evidently still feeling the effects of a caffeine crash. "Hey," said Ashley, but her eyes didn't move up to meet his. That wasn't like Ashley. She usually greeted people with her eyes before greeting them with her voice. "Hey kiddo," said Shay. "You doing okay?" "I'm okay. Feeling tired and achy and yet somehow unable to rest is okay," said Ashley. "My mind is still amped up but unable to do anything productive." "Why do I feel like this, Jay? Is this my life now? Am I going to be okay?" Jay stepped up to Ashley's workbench and seated himself next to her. "I tell you to relax, but it sounds like you're already trying and failing. So maybe it's okay to be amped up and also tired?" "It's kind of the worst," said Ashley. "To be tired but also incapable of resting." Jay smiled. Tired but also incapable of resting described how he felt on most days. It had become such a familiar part of his condition that he forgot what it was like to be young, to have the kind of energy that Ashley always seemed to be brimming with. "I think you'll have to get used to that, kiddo," said Jay. "I think you're just getting an early taste of what being an adult is like." "That's not reassuring at all," said Ashley. "You feel like this every day? If you came here to comfort me, you're doing a terrible job." Jay frowned. He always considered himself a good teacher, but he'd come to learn that mentoring someone required skills beyond simply teaching them a skill. When it came to comforting people in times of crisis, he always seemed to manage to find the right words. On day-to-day matters, however... "Well," said Jay, "I think I spend a lot of days feeling how you feel right now. But luckily, this will pass for you. And look at it this way, you've learned something today, didn't you?" "Yes," said Ashley. "Maddie is in possession of powerful potions that can yield devastating effects, and she disguises them under innocent-sounding names like espresso." Jay nodded, more a nod prompting her to continue than to display approval. "But also you have a terrible bedside manner." Also you have a terrible bedside manner?" "Well, but you weren't forced to drink the coffee, were you?" Yeah, I've got no idea who said what at that point. "No, I did that to myself," said Ashley. "Is that what you wanted me to say?" "You were right, Jay." "Oh, you were right, Jay. I tried something new for the first time and now I get to spend the rest of my life regretting it." "Try a few hours," said Jay. "I'm pretty sure the regret will wear off as soon as you recover from this caffeine crash. After that, hopefully you'll be codified in a part of your brain that hesitates just a little bit when you're tempted to ask for a third or fourth espresso shot." Ashley continued, looking straight ahead. Is that Ashley or... "Point remains. Trying new things can be hazardous to your health. Actions have consequences, and the consequences can feel real bad." She opened her mouth and made a noise that was halfway between a gasp and a yawn, like someone who had too much carbon dioxide in their bloodstream and didn't know how to correct that problem without making a face that resembled a fish. "Thanks for the lesson, Jay. I'm never going to try ingesting anything new ever again." Jay frowned again and tried his best to course correct back to something that resembled a useful lesson. "That's nice and all, but I don't think that avoiding new and novel drinks is going to protect you from ever encountering harm again." "Right, which is why I'm not limiting you to drinks," said Ashley. "No new foods. I've got a decent enough palate anyway. I think I'm good sticking to the same dozen or so meals for the rest of my life. Jay looked at Ashley and hesitated for a moment. He wasn't sure what words of wisdom he could impart to the girl, but he was pretty sure that words weren't the only way to get someone out of a slump. Ashley, stand up. He stood up himself for fear of looking unwilling to follow his own advice. Why? Said Ashley. Because you can. I can't, said Ashley. All the more reason to stand up, said Jay. You should stand up to prove that you can. And if you can't, well, that's good to know too. Ashley groaned and twisted so that she was lying down on the workbench. Jay was about to object, but then she started rolling off the workbench and plopped onto the floor. Ouch! Jay watched Ashley, not reaching down to offer her a hand. If she was capable of saying ouch, she was capable of asking for help if she needed it. Several painful moments later, Ashley lifted herself off the floor and shuffled backward until she was leaning against the wall next to her workbench. See? You thought you couldn't stand, but you can. Hooray for me, I'm overjoyed, she said in a tone that was clearly far from overjoyed. You can sit down if you'd like to, said Jay, sensing that standing was actually a non-trivial feat for Ashley at this moment. She hopped back onto the workbench, but this time sat perched at the edge with her legs hanging over the edge, rather than slumped back with her back against the wall like she had been when he had first walked in. That was a good sign. I don't want one bad experience to kill your sense of adventure, said Jay. Look at where my sense of adventure has gotten me, Jay. I flew too close to the sun, and now that I'm on the surface of the sun, the lights are all bright, and I feel hot and tingly all over, and I feel tired like it's summer all the time, and I really don't like it. I'm just like Icarus. That's not how the story of Icarus goes, though, said Jay. Isn't it? Icarus didn't fly to the sun, said Jay. His journey was limited to our atmosphere. He just got too close to the sun and his wings melted. Ashley raised an eyebrow. Oh, is that what happened? Now the part at the beginning of the story where his dad tells him not to fly too close to the sun or his... That's still Ashley. Now the part at the beginning of the story where his dad tells him not to fly too close to the sun or his wings will melt makes a lot more sense. Classic foreshadowing. You're forgetting a part of the story though, said Jay. Icarus' father told him not to fly too high or the sun would melt his wings, but he also said not to fly too low when crossing the sea or his wings would get wet, and he would sink and drown. Wow, so Icarus flying high was actually brilliant. His wings melted, but he managed to avoid drowning. Ashley's voice was still monotone, but she was leaning forward. Well, no, said Jay. He still drowned because after his wings melted, he crashed into the sea. Ashley gave a nod of acknowledgement. Same result, so the moral of the story is that you're doomed no matter what you do? No, said Jay. He drowned, but before he drowned, he soared. Story still ends with him drowning, said Ashley. Every story ends with death in some way, Ashley. The question isn't whether you will die or not. The question is before you die, will you take the opportunity to see just how high you can fly? Alright. And a letter from Sophie Cordova. My dear Maddie, thank you for getting in touch with me. Or perhaps I should say congratulations. I made such a point of making myself hard to find that it's always a surprise to hear from anyone. I sometimes find myself fearing the day when I'll be contacted by someone who isn't a fan of mine and who is more interested in locking me away than seeking my advice. One might think that people interested in putting me away would be more capable and in possession of more resources than those like yourself who simply possess curiosity, and yet it's always the latter who manage to break through the veil I've erected between myself and the outside world. You're the first in over 3 years to manage this, and so it is now time for me to find another hiding place. If your next letter manages to find me, I'll truly have something to worry about. If you're looking for a solution to the problem you outlined in your letter, I'm afraid I must disappoint you. My business is that of teaching people how to ask the right questions so that they can find the answer themselves, not giving the answers. After all, the most worthwhile answers are the ones I haven't found yet. That being said, your question about time transference is an issue of special interest to me. The idea of storing vitality within a living, non-sentient creature such as a plant is one that I've long considered. The issue has always been one of retrieval. If you did find a way to transfer vitality from a plant into a sentient creature, it would result in a tremendous discharge of energy, such a great discharge that I'm sure it would kill whatever subject was on the receiving end. Absorbing life force from something doesn't seem that it would do you much good if it kills you in the process. Consequently, I've never experimented with this process myself. Even if I have earned a reputation for being a rule breaker, there are certain things that are simply off limits. Your idea of using a non-living soul as the target for transference is an interesting one. No risk of killing the vitality recipient if it's already dead. Of course that would require finding a way to infuse a non-living soul with vitality in the first place. And being that most reanimation techniques involve a significant discharge of energy, using the vitality transfers to trigger would effectively be killing two birds with one stone. Of course reanimation is a far cry from necromancy, but if your only problem is one of living on borrowed time, well, you know better than I do how to resolve the particulars. I'm an alchemist, not a necromancer. If I can offer you one piece of advice, these kind of vitality transfers are not something to be experimented with. Anytime that time is borrowed or lent, you are making an alteration to a ledger that the powers that be keep a very careful eye on. Even the smallest of disturbances is enough to attract the notice, and attracting the notice will put a quick end to any research you might be in the midst of. So if you are going to try a vitality transference, don't experiment. Go straight for the end goal. If you're going to catch the attention of those whose attention you do not want, make sure that the endeavor is worthwhile. If you have a good reputation, it would be a shame to squander it on something so trivial as allowing a mouse a few extra seconds on this side of mortality. As they say, go big or go home. I appreciate you taking the time to write to me. You've given me new things to pontificate on, and perhaps one day you may see the results of that pontification in one of my future volumes. Of course, it should go without saying that you won't be able to reach me again, at least not the same way you did before. I've been found, and that means I need to do a better job of covering my tracks. While I rationally hope that I'll never find myself in a position where a fan's letter finds me, there's always a part of me that hopes that one of my readers will manage to track me down. Who knows, perhaps the next letter I receive at my next residence will come from you. But I'm sure that you have better things to do with your time than try to track me down. There's a time to adopt the posture of a student and focus on learning, but it's obvious to me that you are someone who has spent plenty of time learning things and is now ready to do things. So do things, Maddie. Do big things, do dangerous things, do things that break the rules. Not all rules need to be broken, but if you're smart enough to find me, you're smart enough to know which rules are worth breaking. I'm grateful that it's always the reader mail that seems to find me and never the demands to appear before some kind of tribunal or committee. I used to think that this was a long string of extremely good luck on my part, but over time I've come to realize that those who wish me gone lack the insight of the people who earnestly read my work. Readers such as yourself, who are the only ones who truly know me well enough to understand how I think and where I would hide. Bravo, Maddie. You've demonstrated your ability to think like me. Now you must learn to think like yourself. Yours truly, Sophie Cordova. Okay, an author. That's apparently an alchemist as well. And Maddie was seeking advice from her in regards of getting the time they stored in that tree back. Ashley's journal. You can read Ashley's journal. It's just a question of where is it. I can read advisory roll as well. Beth 2, I can't. Rotten Poppy is also something I could read. So is Perfectionist. So I could read most things. I just need to find them again. Fisherman 2. Yes. Okay. Have I read The Fisherman 1? Probably, right? Yes. That being said, I can't click on it from here. Let's go for it. Because unfortunately I have no idea how the first story went like anymore. I'll probably get back into it, but I don't know the voices of the characters. So yeah, well, we'll give it a try. The expression on Jack's face was expectant when Maddie came out of the kitchen carrying his plate. Expectant, but not impatient. The expression fit his posture, sitting upright with hands folded and resting in front of him. "Your halibut's ready." Jack's eyebrows raised when Maddie set the plate down in front of him. He closed his eyes and lowered his chin. Just a tad, allowing the scent of grilled fish to waft into his nostrils as he drank in the odor. As several moments passed, a smile crawled onto his face and he grabbed the fork and began cutting the halibut up. He was several mouthfuls in when Maddie spoke up. "I thought you said you weren't going to eat it," she said. "Couldn't help myself," said Jack. "Smelled too good not to give it a taste, and tasted too good to stop." "I couldn't help but notice the hesitation," said Maddie. Jack held up the fork, which had a piece of the fish speared on it. "You know, a fish like this, you never know what kind of memories it's going to bring up. Not all memories are good, but this fish, it tastes like adventure. Conquest." "You fish much?" "You could say that," said Jack with a grin. "I made it out on the water several days each year." "Catch any big ones?" "Lots, I'm sure," said Jack. "But I'm more of a quantity over size kind of person." Do you know what you're saying there?" "Oh, I get it. I didn't know what I was saying there." "Yep." "The most important weight is your tally at the end of the day. I'm not the patient kind of fisherman." "Where do you learn to be so patient if not from fishing?" "Fishing's the only time I'm not a patient man," said Jack. "Funny," said Maddie. "I tend to hear the opposite from a lot of people." "I take really long vacations," said Jack. "That's when you fish?" "That's when I don't fish," said Jack. "Ah, you're a fish tradesman." "Better known as a fisherman," said Jack. "But yeah." "You could have led with that, you know," said Maddie. "Didn't I?" said Jack. "Well, like I said, I don't get out on the water very often." "And yet it's your profession," said Maddie. "I think that would mean more days on the water." "Such is life in Alaska," he said. "Fishing season gets shorter every year." "Ah, of course," said Maddie. "Halibut are seasonal. You can only catch them when they migrate, is that it? It's the kind of business that's only open a few days out of the year thanks to Mother Nature?" "Thanks to the government," said Jack. "In 1970, halibut season was 150 days long. Then it got shortened to 100 days. "You only work 100 days out of the year?" "No, madam," said Jack. 100-day halibut season was before my time. By the time I found myself on that side of the Pacific, they were down to fishing derbies. Actually, that's what got me out there." "Derbies?" "All the fish you can catch for 24 hours. They're spaced out. Fishing season is just a few days a year now." "Can you make a living doing that?" "You can catch a lot of fish in one day," said Jack. "That's why they had to shorten the season. It doesn't take very many skiffs on the water before you have a problem with overfishing. I was sold on the promise of working for several days out of the year and being able to come back home and live the good life the 360 days out of the year that I didn't have to work." He grinned in a way that suggested he wanted Maddie to prompt further. "Did Alaska deliver on that promise?" said Maddie. "Is America truly a land where the streets are paved with gold?" "The streets aren't paved with gold, even though I'm told there's black gold to be found in Alaska. But yes, Alaska did deliver what was promised. I worked several derbies a year and I made enough to live pretty well. I just skipped the part where I was supposed to come back home." "What's the matter?" said Maddie. "Didn't want to sail back to Australia? Afraid of getting seasick?" "No, madam," said Jack, apparently missing her joke. You met someone who convinced you to stay?" "A few someones," said Jack. "You spend some time working a skiff with someone that's the kind of bond you don't find easily, and it's not the kind of thing you give up easily." "That kind of bond, working only a few days out of the year?" said Maddie. "It's intense," said Jack. "It's like being in the line of duty. It's a little like going to war." "War against the fishes?" "War against the sea," said Jack. "When it's all you can catch for 24 hours, you don't have time to be safe. When the day arrives, you're out on the water no matter the weather. And those skiffs are not large boats. For every 1,000 fishermen that go out, 997 come back. Firefighters have better odds than that. Soldiers have better odds than that. So yes, it's a bit like going to war. He looked down at the fish in front of him for a moment. There were sometimes I could swear I could smell death on the water. And every time you pulled up to shore with a boat full of fish and the same number of men you left with, it was a giant middle finger to Death's face. He broke into a grin. In those moments you never feel more at home. And when you have that kind of experience with someone, you don't fuck off to spend a year in Australia, you know? He tapped his chest. I'm one of them now. Jack looked around and Maddie realized it was the first moment she'd seen Jack really take notice of the space he was in. His eyes squinted as they scanned the shelves behind her and the people at the tables around him. But I ended up here. I think I always knew I would be here sooner or later. Okay. Wasn't Ashley's journal somewhere down here? Wait, that maybe? Yeah, that is what it was. Robattle Royale Robust Power Rankings. Windlass. When I first saw the name of the spot, I thought it was styled to be like a girl who could run, control storms, and run like a ninja. A real lass of the wind. Or maybe a girl of the elements, someone with the ability to become the wind itself. If I were a windlass, I could vanish in an instant whenever Maddie appeared. She would look around and say, "Where's Ashley?" And I would be right there, but she wouldn't notice it because I would be one with the wind. Then when she left, I would fade back into the room, like a ninja. This would only work outside and in the rooms that are really breezy, so I'd probably set up fans in the workshop to make it really drafty. Then I looked it up online and learned that windlass is actually a fancy name for a winch used to pull anchors up, which at first made me think the spot was lame. It works by hooking its arm under enemy bots and pulling it up to flip them over. It never even tries to smash the other bots to bits or melt it with fire. But then I watched it in action and realized that flipping your enemy on their back to incapacitate them is the ultimate ninja move. Windlass moves like a master, spending the entire match trying to bait its opponent into exposing its weakness. And then, like a ninja master that knows how to jab at exactly the right pressure point on the back of the neck to make her enemy's head explode, Windlass grabs the enemy bot by the one part of it that happens to be sticking out at the wrong time and flips it on its back. Note: most bots only have wheels or legs on the bottom, not on the top, so when you flip them over they are totally helpless and the match is over. To avoid this happening, make sure to put wheels on the top as well. When I make a bot like Windlass, I'm going to call it Badass because that's what it is. Okay. How much memories do I have left? Nope. Yeah, I could read Ashley's journal too. I just need to find it. And I feel like it was in the basement. I'm not sure, but that's where I'm going to look for it. What's that? Oh, that's just what's it called? A tire? It's not really a tire in that case. It's a wheel for the door. Actually, is that somewhere behind here? There it is. Robattle. Excuse me. Robattle Royale Robust Power Rankings. Alpha Charlie Echo. All of the commentators call this robot Ace, probably because it's so good. It seems biased for them to call one particular robot Ace, but it's obvious how it got his name when it wins all of the time. At first it looks like the spot doesn't have a weapon and it's just designed to be really fast and agile. Then you realize that its entire body is a weapon for ramming into unsuspecting people. This would be a great tactic if you got into a fight when you didn't have a weapon. You don't need a flamethrower or a buzzsaw if you just have a 150 kg body and can ram into people really fast. This probably wouldn't work very well for me because I don't weigh 150 kg and I'm pretty small. But that isn't a problem since I usually carry things that can be used as weapons. Like, I could carry a crowbar and then if someone tried to attack me I could take the L and jam the crowbar under their feet and then pull it up and use it to knock them off balance, even though I'm probably smaller than most people. I'm not sure why it's named Alpha Charlie Echo. I assume... Oh god, Ashley. Ashley, would you mind taking the first letters of every one of those 3 words and putting them together? Maybe you'll realize why it's called Alpha Charlie Echo. Maybe you'll realize why the commentators call it Ace. You'll figure it out. I assumed it was a remake or made into in the style of a bot called Alpha Charlie, but there aren't any other bots by that name, and the team that made it are all rookies. Also, none of them are named Charlie. Maybe it's named after someone's dad or brother. The next robot will probably be called Beta Charlie Echo, or maybe Alpha V2 Charlie Echo, or Final 2 Charlie Echo. I somehow doubt that. But, well, is there a... There doesn't seem to be an Ashley's Journal number 3, so we'll probably never know what the third robot was going to be called. Is there anything else I have the required memories or fragments for? I don't think I would. No, I don't. But we've read for quite a while, so I think we're going to end the episode here. Wait, there we go. Can I go in there? No, I can't go in there yet. And we'll use the next episode to continue with the story. See you then.